what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And on today's video, I have a good one for you, as I think I say every time. But on today's video, I mean it. Because today, we are taking a look at the DIADORA ATOMO Star. Now for me, I think this is probably a max cushion daily trainer, but could it be a super trainer? Let's get into it. Before we get started, I do just want to say that DIADORA was good enough to send me this pair of the ATOMO Star for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the DIADORA ATOMO Star for $240. And look, I know it's expensive, but bear with me. You're going to want to hear about this shoe. Although I will concede it is expensive. I don't think we're going to be getting around that. But I will place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. Now, the main reason for the price of the ATOMO Star is that this is 100% handmade in Italy. So we're not talking about the standard, very inexpensive mass production line in China or Vietnam. The ATOMO Star is handmade in Italy by shoe artisans. So take that for what it's worth. And to me, you know, it's a little difficult because I know it's handmade in Italy and I have high expectations when I see that something is handmade in Italy. And you know, when I look at this, it seems like I do see the increase in quality, the increase in workmanship around the shoe. But of course, you are going to have to make that decision if that's a value that you put on a shoe. Or would you rather save a little bit of money and buy something that is mass produced in one of the countries that produces most of the world's shoes? Now, I will say that this is $240 in the US. In Europe, it costs 190 euros. Now, on the day that I'm filming this video, the exchange rate means that 190 euros equals $215.85. So for those of you in Europe, this is a much better deal. And I'm actually quite happy for those in Europe because usually shoes are much less expensive in the US. But you know, DIADORA, I think they could do something with the price, especially in the US, to bring it down so it's more in line with the rest of the world. Who knows if that will ever happen. Recent geopolitical events have probably made stuff coming into the United States a little more expensive. But this isn't a place for that. Let's finish getting into the shoe. Now, DIADORA claims that in a US men's size 10, the ATOMO Star will tip the scale at 9.7 ounces, or 257 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 11.5 ounces, or 327 grams. So not heavy, not light, but when the shoe is on the foot, there is nothing that's screaming or making you feel like you're running in a heavy shoe. Now, remember, I know you haven't forgot, but remember, $240, right? We're kind of on the higher price end, but it's not unheard of. If you're looking at spending around this price range for this type of shoe, you might be considering something like the Nike Pegasus Premium. Now, the Nike Pegasus Premium costs $210. We have 45 in the heel, 35 in the forefoot for a 10mm drop. Wait, did I tell you the drop of the ATOMO Star? The ATOMO Star has 40 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. So 6mm drop, 10mm drop. And the Pegasus Premium, in my size, weighs in at 396 grams. So at 69 grams less than the Peg Premium, the difference is very pronounced when I'm holding them in my hands like this. But also, next up, I think you may be comparing the ATOMO Star to the Puma Mag Max. Now, the Puma Mag Max only cost $180, which is still expensive, just not as expensive. Now, the Mag Max has 46/38 for an 8mm drop and weighs in my size, in 369 grams. So it still weighs 42 grams more than the ATOMO Star. And then finally, I think we also have to consider the Brooks Glycerin Max. We're back up in the double hundreds. That's a clunky way of saying it, but the Glycerin Max will cost $200. Glycerin Max has 45/39, also for a 6mm drop, and weighs in at 379 grams. So the Glycerin Max weighs 52 grams more than the ATOMO Star. So what that is telling me is that the ATOMO Star is much lighter than the competition. So let's get into it, and let's start at the top and work our way down. Now, the padding around the heel collar, let me hold that up, is definitely daily trainer-esque, as in there's a lot of padding here, but there is not enough padding to make it obnoxious. And when I say obnoxious, I'm talking about just like overdoing the padding so much that it couldn't possibly be providing more cushion just because there is so much. There has to be a limit where the cushion isn't going to make a difference. And I think DIADORA has found a nice limit here. There's plenty of cushioning. The shoe is very comfortable, but they haven't overdone it. Now, the heel counter is super rigid. I did get a good heel lockdown. And then, of course, right here on the back, this is the first shout out to Italy. We have a little Italian flag here on the back, which I really like. And then moving on to the upper, DIADORA is using a nylon air mesh and microfiber upper. Now, in past DIADORA shoes, I've thought that the microfiber upper is the part that just makes it feel of higher quality. And I think that's the same with the ATOMO Star. We have a nice microfiber toe bumper coming around the front, which brings us nicely into overlays. There seems to be a good amount of overlays on the ATOMO Star, which is almost surprising because of the weight and how it weighs so much less than the competition. But again, we've got this microfiber coming around the toe box. The microfiber accents kind of run up along the eyelet chain just to give that a little bit of reinforcement. Of course, we got the branding here on the lateral and the medial side. We've also got this piece right here, which I think is a design element, but it's probably providing a little bit of rigidity to the upper. We have this on the lateral side, and then a little bit further back on the medial side. And then of course we have this overlay right on the back, which is just giving it style points. I'm loving this ribbed look right on the back. Yeah, it's nice. Tongue, much like the heel collar, is fairly thin for a daily trainer. I mean, it's super padded, but it's not over the top. Again, it's not obnoxiously padded. DIADORA has done it well, and it's fairly stiff, so the tongue isn't going to be like flapping around when you put your foot in. I really think they've nailed the thickness of the tongue, giving you just the right amount of protection. And of course, I didn't have any lace bite when I cinched down those laces without going over the top with the tongue. The tongue is gusseted, and we do have a lace loop right on the front. Yeah, the tongue just works. Next, let's come on down to the midsole. And this is what makes the ride really special. DIADORA is using their Anima N2 midsole foam. Now, it is a supercritical EVA, it is light, it's responsive, and it really is a treat to run in. I think DIADORA is onto something with this Anima N2 foam. Now, you may remember that we have seen the Anima N2 foam in the Frequenza 2, and this is DIADORA's up-tempo daily trainer. This is a non-plated option that you're probably going to want to take out when you want to run a little faster. It is very light. With the more Anima N2 midsole foam in the Atomo Star, you're getting that light and responsive midsole foam with a lot more cushion. Before we move on to the ride, let's just take a look at the outsole rubber. And to me, I'm a little surprised at how much outsole rubber there is. Or not how much outsole rubber there is, but how much exposed midsole foam there is. There is a lot right here in the middle, and I suppose that's a good thing. Probably the reason that the Atomo Star is weighing in so much less than the other shoes. As far as durability goes, it's holding up remarkably well. In fact, I'm not seeing too much wear on the exposed midsole foam, which is a little surprising. Mostly I'm seeing that wear right down here on the side, but that is obviously where I'm landing back here and then I'm rolling through. Just there's a few scratch marks. But other than that, the rubber is showing remarkably little wear for how much I've run in the shoe. Now, while we're looking at the bottom of the shoe, I just want you to see how wide this base is. This wide base contributes to a very stable ride. Now, of course, we've got a 40mm stack in the heel. Sometimes a shoe with a 40mm stack can be a little unstable, especially when you're going around corners. There is none of that nonsense with the Atomo Star. The upper holds your foot in place, centered over the midsole, and gives you a good lockdown, so when you're running and going around corners, it doesn't feel like you're going to slide off the top of the shoe. DIADORA is including a removable insole. They're calling it their DIADORA insole, and this thing really adds a lot to the shoe. If I turn it around, you can see this little red piece right here, which is really increasing the cushioning right on your heel. It definitely contributes to that soft step-in feel and that smooth, soft running motion. Now, it is fully ventilated. It has a high absorption and desorption rate. I really didn't test that because I didn't get them wet. And I will take their word for that because I don't really want to get these shoes wet. And also, apparently, this DIADORA insole minimizes thermal sensation, so your feet aren't going to overheat. And it has antibacterial components, so it's going to eliminate any odor. I think that's always a good thing, right? Squeeze this back in here. Okay, so let's talk about ride, because DIADORA is calling this a super trainer. Now, the funny thing about a term like super trainer is that there really is no definition. So yes, this is a super trainer. However, if I'm honest, when I think super trainer, I'm probably thinking of something with a plate. I'm probably thinking of something that is complementary to a race day shoe. Now, while I could argue that the Atomo Star is complementary to their race day shoe, the DIADORA Gara Carbon 2, and normally I think of a shoe that can really pick up the pace. And you can nail those tough workouts. So when it comes time to race day, you put on something like the Gara Carbon 2 and it's super light and nimble and it just sends you forward to break all your goals. But no, in this case, with the Atomo Star, this is a shoe that you could wear every single day. It's not something that you're going to be keeping for those higher end workouts or just your long runs. In fact, on the website for the Atomo Star, DIADORA says that you can run every day and for as many miles as you want, and that the Atomo Star is there to deliver. And I would agree with that. This is a shoe that is comfortable to wear every day. It is protective and responsive enough that you could theoretically run as long as you want. If I was going to be running for a very long time, let's think of something like a Road Ultra, the Atomo Star is definitely a shoe I would consider because there is a lot of cushioning and a high amount of responsiveness. Now, as far as picking up the pace goes, I don't know. When there's something like the Frequenza 2, I would rather pick up the pace in the Frequenza 2 just because it's so much lighter and that's what it's made for. Now, in my testing of the Atomo Star, I did run some strides in this, but most of my runs were building up to the Boston Marathon, and they were long and easy. And that is where the Atomo Star really excels. And it excels more than the competition. And I think that is probably just a product of the lower weight, but also the Anima N2 midsole foam is just, it's really nice. So look, I think this is tricky. Or, if you're price conscious, this isn't really tricky. This is kind of a non-starter at $240. Maybe if you found yourself going to Europe, you could pick up a pair for a little bit less, but naturally I wouldn't recommend going to Europe to pick up a pair just because that on its own kind of offsets the savings. If you are not price conscious, I think you will be very happy running in this shoe, but Gotta say, for most people, $240 is a difficult place to get to buy a max cushion daily trainer, no matter how good it is. So now I want to hear from you. Have you run in any DIADORA shoes? Are you thinking of picking up a pair of the Atomo Star? Drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the DIADORA Atomo Star. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.